Thank you, Sarah. Hi, so yes, my name's Nikki Clarkson and I work for the Royal College of Nursing as a Learning and Development Facilitator, and a very warm welcome to our fourth Inclusion Cafe book club. And this evening we'll be exploring stories and experiences of neurodiversity in the healthcare profession. So it's a great opportunity to discuss a really important and some really critical issues. And one of the ways we'll be exploring the lived experience is looking at chapter 2, which is titled Camouflage Hidden in Plain Sight, from a book that's called Autism in Heels. And this was written by Jenifer Cook O'Toole, who was diagnosed with Asperger's at 35. And she talks about masking, which is something particularly women will use to conform to what's considered to be the social norm. So really looking forward to some interested discussions a little bit later on. But before that, we'll be chatting to Dr. Rachael Major and Fraser Smith about their experiences around neurodiverse issues and their work around them. So without further ado, Fraser and Rachael, a very warm welcome and thank you for your time. And if I may, if I can start with you, Fraser, if that's okay, and if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and telling our listeners really a bit about your background and what your personal experience is around neurodiversity.
No problem. Hi, I'm Fraser Smith. I'm a training manager for a private care company. We have 70 care homes throughout the UK, so I'm in charge of mandatory and home-specific training, make sure everybody's trained and up to date with that. I'm also a learning rep with the RCN, and we started that a year and a half ago, Nikki, now, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've done quite a lot of joint sort of work and things as well. So yeah, it's been a good experience with that. Myself, I am dyslexic, and that's why I've been asked to come along and just share my experiences of dyslexia and my experiences through life, really. So yeah, that's myself. I don't know if Rachael wanted to introduce herself for now, or and then I'll start my story.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name's Rachael Major. I am a senior lecturer at the Institute of Health and Social Care Studies in Guernsey, so right down the south. I'm not I've got no diagnosis of neurodiversity myself, but I have got 2 boys that are both neurodiverse, and I think probably got a neurodiverse husband as well. I've, over the last few years, so since about 2014, I've been doing research around neurodiversity. So started off looking at dyslexia in nursing, particularly with registered nurses. That's what my doctorate was about. And then since then, I've now gone on to look at wider neurodiversity. So autistic spectrum conditions, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. So the wide range. From student nurses, training nursing associates, registered nurses and nursing associates.
Thank you, Rachael. So Fraser, really over to you. Just tell us a little bit what life was like then when you were at school.
Okay, well, starting off at primary school, it wasn't a nice experience. All the way through primary school, I was told I was lazy, I was not listening, not taking part. I was sent for hearing tests, sight tests, everything like that, all the way through primary school. And yeah, I used to dread parents' evening when my mum and dad used to go to school, because guaranteed as soon as they came home, I'd be getting shouted at and things like that, saying I'm not trying hard enough and things. So yeah, it was a difficult time, and I'll be perfectly honest, I think I've blanked out quite a bit of my primary school. I had one sort of good thing that really was good for me, and I was a really good goalkeeper. I played football. I ended up being semi-professional in the end and things like that, but injuries stopped me playing football. But I think that was my saviour almost through primary school, definitely. I had something to focus on. I then went to high school, and within 3 weeks of being at high school, a teacher came up to me and went, "Fraser, I think you're dyslexic." So after that, I went for tests, and yeah, I found out that was mild dyslexia. So I had something to focus on again, and I had my mum and dad were devastated, to be perfectly honest, because everything that sort of put me through and shouted at me, and they said, but you've been dyslexic, there was a reason why you were lazy, you weren't listening, things like that. So I think that was quite good getting that at high school. I really don't know where I would be if I never had Mrs. Coulthard. It was a Mrs. Coulthard who recognised within that 3 weeks, and I've always wanted to go back and say thank you to her. But yeah, so through high school, I did get the support, and Mrs. Coulthard, she taught me a lot of things like rhythms, rhymes, things like that to help with my spelling and stuff. And again, the football saved me because, yeah, I was getting taken out of normal classes to go to remedial classes, as they called them back then, which other sort of school, my friends and stuff, going, why are you going there? And yeah, they were, yeah, I could have been quite open to being bullied and stuff, but I had good friends at that point. And yeah, so I was getting out of there, and when it came to exam time, I used to get 10 minutes extra before or during the exam. I'd get, for every hour, I would get 10 minutes extra. So even then, people were coming, how's he getting extra time, things like that. So again, it was highlighted. But I was lucky because, yeah, the football, I think that, as I say, that did save me, because everybody's like, oh, there's Fraser the goalkeeper sort of thing, because I was good and we were winning trophies and stuff. Yeah, I really don't know how that would have been if I didn't have that. So yeah.
So there seemed to be sort of like a slight change of behaviour, sort of like, you know, pre and post that diagnosis of people around you. But, you know, like you said, that, you know, that, you know, blanking some of it out because it was so negative. And I wondered, Rachel, is that still quite a normal experience, you know, in schools, this, you know, negative experience of, you know, lots of children before they're diagnosed?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. And certainly from my experience with the interviews that I've done with nurses and students, there's a lot of people being diagnosed quite late, coming into university without a diagnosis, and it's being picked up in first, possibly second, sometimes third year, or once they're failing, or something is going on. So it's not uncommon particularly for people who are not struggling quite as academically as others, that they just slip under the radar. Because then, or they're not disruptive. So somebody bouncing off the walls, causing trouble in class, is much more likely to get a diagnosis of something. It may not be ADHD, it may be some kind of behavioural disorder, but they will be picked up. You would the book around autism. Girls tend to sit there a little bit under the radar. They try to conform, both with ASC and with ADHD. They're much more likely to not to be picked up until later on, if at all, in life.
So that ability to camouflage and mask it, which is exactly what's described.
And it's what I thought was really important there, Fraser, was that teacher. And that teacher can make or break that experience. Either being constantly told that you're stupid, which seems to be a narrative that goes through a lot of people with neurodiversity, and then getting that diagnosis and thinking, what if I'd been picked up earlier? What if somebody had supported me earlier? Where would I have been in life? What would I have done? So
yeah, and again, it was just, sorry for putting in, but this was back in the 80s and stuff, that I was sort of at school and things, and there was a lot of studies around dyslexia at the time, and my whole family were asked to actually go into a study, and I don't know if it came out, but yeah, it was a lot of my mum's side, the family were all dyslexic, and my niece my cousin, she was in primary school, primary 1 or 2, when they discovered that she was severe dyslexic. So she got the support from then, and she's now a doctor. So yeah, getting that early help makes a massive difference. So I was lucky, I found it at high school, and I didn't continue from high school, but yeah, yeah, definitely getting that early support and help can go a long way. Yeah.
Not just for academic level, but self-esteem, self-confidence.
Yeah.
All the way through, really.
Yeah.
How comfortable, Fraser, were you in sharing your experience of dyslexia? You know, as I mean, I know it seemed to be highlighted when there was those extra 10 minutes at exams and what have you, but did you then sort of manage to have, were you more comfortable in talking about it, or was it still something that?
No, it was, I think it wasn't until I really started in care, I'll be perfectly honest, when I was in my sort of 30s, that I was more comfortable sharing it. All the way through high school and stuff, I still had it. Although I was getting that extra time, I was just, I just needed extra time for something. And that I used to make up excuses, basically, to people. So I didn't want to say I was dyslexic. And my confidence, and although I'm a trainer and I stand up and talk and everything, I'm still not a confident person. I don't enjoy big social groups and things like that. I sort of hide away when it comes to that. So that early sort of time at primary school, it still affects me now. Although I'm a lot more confident and stuff, it's still nervous, things like that, talking about it. So yeah, it was very difficult. And I didn't want to share until in my 30s, as I say, when I started working in care and things like that. I always had it. A lot of my friends probably still don't actually know I'm dyslexic. It's only in the workplace that I still share it.
Yeah.
And it was actually when you first asked me to come along to here, and I saw a book club and a paragraph to read. I'm like, you better no ask me to read out because I won't be coming on that sort of thing. So I still don't feel comfortable just reading out something like that in public. Because even with my training, I've memorised most of it. Although I've got all the slides and it's memorised. I don't even look at it. So yeah, it takes me a while to get into a course, and I have to get a course early so that I can memorise it, so I've got that confidence to deliver it. Yeah, so it's a lot more work. Yeah,
that's something that came up in my first research was that I had somebody who memorised absolutely everything and always made sure, again, did training, would always make sure that they went and wrote everything that on the board that they knew they were going to struggle with before they went into the class, before anybody else was there.
Yeah.
So lots and lots of really good compensatory mechanisms that are going on to try and deal with some of the situations that you're struggling with or find more difficult.
Yeah, I was actually delivering dementia training yesterday, and I had my notes on how to spell Alzheimer's and frontal temporal and everything like that. I had it all written down, so that when I went up to the whiteboard, I just looked at it and spelled it that way. So again, I've learned a lot of tricks almost to help myself when I'm in sort of situations like that. And that's been very important, to be able to do that and be able to find out ways of making things work. So yeah, I think that's helped me a lot. And again, Mrs. Coulthard started me with that, learning wee tricks and showing me what to do if you're in this situation, what to do. So yeah, she was a massive, massive help. And I just wish I could go back and actually say hello and thank you to her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You find actually that even people that don't have a diagnosis, once you realise what is going on, you go back and you talk to them about what compensatory strategies they've got. They've got huge amounts to get to where they've got to as a registered nurse or a student, or some might not be as positive as others, but they've usually got some really good strategies in place. And one person was talking to me about they actually didn't like going to some of the academic support because they actually tried to take away some of those strategies. So we need to be really mindful that we work with the good strategies to support those strategies. And some of them are really positive strategies. So things like what comes up is taking extra time, double checking everything, particularly things around drug calculations. Now that's not a bad thing for anybody to do. So there's lots of strategies that people put in place that would benefit absolutely everybody in practice or in theory as well. Trying to be really organised, I'd love some of my students who aren't neurodiverse to be as organised as some of my neurodiverse students. There are others that are neurodiverse that aren't quite as organised, but
I think I was in terms as well of reasonable adjustments, and this is open to both you, Rachel, and Fraser. You know, you get such a disparity, don't you, even within the same organisation. I mean, how, Fraser, for you, for example, have you had much support from, you know, during your working life around, you know, reasonable adjustments and adapting in order to sort of like meet your specific needs?
Again, the company that I work with now, because when I left school, I was like, I'm just going to do labour work. I'm not going to do anything that I have to read or anything like that. And I ended up being a heavy goods driver, working for bars, the Iron Brew company. It's a bit of a stereotype thing for a Scottish person to drink Iron Brew, but yeah, I had to operate computers and stuff, and that was difficult. But I had a really good van boy who was good in computers, so he did all the typing for me. So it's maybe not the company has helped, but some people that you work with do help and put sort of things in place. And then I sort of gave up the heavy goods driving and just came into care doing home care, and I thought that's easy, I don't have to do much reading or writing again. And then I joined a company that I'm with 13 years ago now, and there's been so many people that have been really pushing me. Again, I started as a carer, and there's a new home opening in Clare House up here in Scotland for people with Prader-Willi syndrome. And I says, I'll go there as a senior carer. But the manager's like, no, Fraser, you're coming as my deputy. And I'm like, no, I don't want that position, because I knew there was going to be loads of writing, things like that. And I just didn't want that sort of position. But she gave me it anyway. She's like, you're being my deputy, and that's it. And she was a great support. And we got like loads of computers and that to help me, pens that can read sentences, things like that, because a lot of my spelling and writing and report sort of writing is when I'm tired, I'm useless. So normally about 6 o'clock's my deadline. I just stop working because there's no point doing anything. And just an example of that was it was quite a major incident. It was someone trying to commit suicide on a motorway, and I had to restrain him and stuff more. It was 10 hours long before I got back to the care home. And I wrote the report quickly, so I remembered everything, sent it down south to the manager, the consensus at that point. The next morning she went, Fraser, could you redo that? There's not one word on that actual page. It was just one word letters. It was just, I even looked at it myself and went, that doesn't make sense to me even. But the night before, it made perfect sense to me. So again, they were great supportive. She almost laughed it off at me, sort of thing. But then Carol, who was in charge of training at the time, says, Fraser, I want you to be a trainer. And I was doing conflict management training at that point, and I don't know how I managed to pass, because I was trying to hold the sheet and do the reading, and I was just shaking, actually trying to get through that, because it's an external company we use. But Carol saw something in me, and she just kept pushing me. And it's now the same with Liz, who's the director of learning development with us. She's pushing me all the time. She's like, Fraser, go for it. And I'm like, oh, I don't want. She's like, no, you can do it. And they don't take no for an answer from me now. They just say, Fraser, do it, because they know I'm a bit hesitant to going forward still. But yeah, the company I'm working with now have been amazing at supporting me and putting anything that I need in place, which has been really good. And that's probably why I've stayed with them for 13 years now. So yeah.
That's great, thank you. And Rachel, have you got anything to add?
Just going back to Fraser's talking about when he's tired, that again is something that really came up in both sets of research that I've done around how symptoms, if you want the better use of the word, are worse when you're tired or stressed. So long days in nursing, the pandemic we've just had, still going through, sorry, when you're particularly stressed. For lots of people, particularly, it's really common to have more than one aspect of neurodiversity. So it's really quite common to have ADHD and dyspraxia, dyslexia, dyspraxia. So we've had people talking about that actually their symptoms of dyspraxia don't come out until they're really tired or stressed, and then they walk into everything and drop everything again, and those kind of things. So that was one thing I wanted to pick up. The thing around reasonable adjustments, the research that I've done, it is really variable about how much reasonable adjustments people get. what's considered acceptable in one area is not considered acceptable for another. So things like voice recording, in some areas that's fine, in other areas it's not. Some say it's data protection. It appears not to be data protection in other areas of the country, so or even in a trust in the same area. So it's really difficult. And the other thing that came up, particularly in the last lot of research, is potentially people almost having their reasonable adjustments used against them, which is awful. So if you've got somebody who needs a rest break just to calm everything down, get their thoughts together, avoid things like getting overtired, so things become, if they then ask for a rest break, they're then almost told that they're not coping, so they don't take a rest break, so that then they are coping, and it just ends up in a vicious cycle. So if somebody does have reasonable adjustments, they're there for a reason. They need to be able to use them and use them effectively, because they're not going to ask for them unless they feel comfortable doing that. And disclosure is really important, because you can't get reasonable adjustments if you don't disclose, and you won't feel comfortable to disclose in an environment that you feel is going to be detrimental to you. So it's really important that the culture of where anybody is working is supportive of those reasonable adjustments, is supportive of diversity in general. We make reasonable adjustments for patients, service users all the time. Why can't we do it for our colleagues, clients?
Absolutely.
Students are stuck in that placement. Staff move. They will go somewhere else that they will find it better and easier, or just more supportive. But students are stuck in that placement for that period of time. And it's not until they're failing that actually find out they should have had reasonable adjustments, and they haven't felt comfortable talking about it.
I think we could thank you so much, and I want to thank you both. I've probably got about 30 seconds each, and it's very quick to say, but just, is there any sort of key message that you want to share? Fraser, I'll say to you first, and then Rachel, and then perhaps hopefully there'll be some questions that people will want to ask you. So any key message, Fraser?
Again, it's difficult to say this, but don't be scared to share. Be open. It's been since then that I've got a real help, and people have been more supportive to me. But I do know how difficult it is to come up and be open about things like that. But yeah, it does help so much, and just being open. So yeah, that's
thank you.
Probably my key message. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you, Fraser. And Rachel, last word to you there.
I just want to emphasise that actually neurodiversity is a positive, yes, and that neurodiverse healthcare staff brings so much empathy, consideration, a different way of looking at things, problem-solving skills. So look after your neurodiverse staff, because they'll give back to you as much as you can if you support them.
Thank you very much indeed. That's been really wonderful.